Hello, climbers, and welcome back to Climbing Mount CMMC. Hello, climbers. My name is Kaleigh, and this is Bobby. And today we are going to be talking about one mountain of the two mountain process of CMMC for MSPs. Now, I'm talking about MSPs specifically. We're going to be discussing MSPs specifically today, but I do believe that two groups could get something out of this. One, a group that is an MSP themselves, and two, somebody who has an MSP that is a contractor in the DIB space. So
Yeah, and this mountain one it's very similar to anyone who's going to be climbing it. So,
yeah,
because it's just about focusing on getting yourself ready, right? And
exactly.
we're just having a slant on it based on MSPs, but it's still very relevant to an OSC who's going to be going, organizations seeking certification, so going for a
Mhm,
level 2.
mhm,
Um, those it definitely is very relevant to them, but
mhm.
uh, just we're going to have a little bit more of a spin specifically about how it relates to MSPs.
Right. So let's talk about this view that we're trying to give you guys. We do really believe as an MSP that we are climbing two mountains. The
Right.
first mountain is ourselves. Getting ourselves as an MSP ready for a level 2 certification and CMMC compliance truly. Then the next mountain is now docking on to our clients and
Yep.
then becoming basically this helper throughout the entire walk up the mountain and through the assessment for your client. Now,
Yeah.
this is when, maybe some other MSPs might be talking a little bit different than we do, but this is just our perspective on we
Sure.
believe we really want to help the client through this entire thing. But again, you might be hearing some different perspectives from other people. We've surely heard a lot of different perspectives,
What do we
but
what do
for
we say,
now,
Kaylee? What are we not?
we're not what?
What do we claim we're not?
Oh, we are not
No.
CMMC Jesus,
We are
and
not.
I am not putting the hand on the CMMC Bible for this
Nope.
one.
Well,
But
but I sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
like
you're
there are
fine.
two really important concerns that I think people need to take into consideration, especially with the 32 CFR rule that's now finalized and,
Mhm.
and is going to be kicking into effect at the time of this recording. It's next month, so it's less than 30 days away that
Yep.
we're going to be like, happy certification new year. It's like it's a whole new world. Now, yes, MSPs do not technically have to get certified. So, Bobby, why are you focusing specifically on them getting certified? Well, let me ask you this. If you had your kids and they were getting on a plane, would you want someone who is not certified to work on that plane or someone that is certified to work on that plane? Kaylee, you have a
Mm,
beautiful daughter and I have a granddaughter.
yep.
What's the answer?
Yeah, that person's going to be certified for sure. Maybe even
Absolutely.
double or triple.
Yeah, can you add some more
Yeah,
certifications? And
add
it's
some
the
more.
same
I'm
way.
begging you.
This
Yeah.
this is these people's livelihoods. Like, do you
Right.
really want to dabble in that without being certified in what you're doing? It just doesn't really make sense when you look at it that way. So to me, like I couldn't imagine not being level 2 certified before I participate in the ecosystem because I feel like it's required.
Yep.
Um,
I love it.
and the other thing is we're also a key part that we want to emphasize is when you're getting ready to be certified yourself,
Mhm.
you want to have a very focused look at how you're going to engage your clients. You don't want to build like this little teeny box over here so you can get your certification, right? So kind of like how sometimes people kind of game the system when it comes to SOC certification level 2s. You don't want to get this little teeny thimble. You want your whole system that you're going to be supporting your clients assessed because then you want to leverage that as you're supporting your clients and that will help them on their journey and they'll appreciate that. So pay
Right.
attention when you're doing that. And that's what we're talking about doing it that way. Now,
Right.
that's not the only way. You can do it a lot of different ways. And like I said, we're not CMC Jesus. So choose your own path.
That's right. Okay, so let's get into this. I'm excited. We've got 12 points along this first mountain. And yes, we are still only talking about the first mountain.
First
And
one.
yes, there are 12 points. So let's go through them. Okay, first, we are, where we've just entered into the park. We see the mountain ahead of us and we have a trail right? There is left where we're saying just commercial clients and keep with what we have. And then we've got right that says step into the CMMC universe and walk
Right.
this treacherous battle uphill
Oh, I can
and down
see it in
the
my head. This is great visualization. I love it.
great. Okay, so it is question one. Do I even want to do this in
Yeah.
the first place? It might sound stupid, but like, hello, you've got to ask yourself that because you are doing your customers or your clients that are in this space, in the DIB space, that are contractors, you're doing them a huge disservice if you cannot make up your mind, but you're still an MSP for them because they actually need an MSP that's going to be able to climb this or has already climbed this before. So when you are stalling like this with this decision, you're also really not helping your clients that are in that
Yeah.
space. So
So true.
it's so important for you guys to make this decision as an MSP.
As early as possible. We're
Yeah.
getting emails daily from people that are like, "Hey, my MSP finally told me that they're not going to do it. Could you help us?" And
Yeah.
we're like, "Sure, bring it on. We want to be a part of that." But I mean, those people should be applauded. We're coming into the 11th hour here. It would have been better
Yeah.
if they would have had a little more time to do this because now it's on crunch time because they, contract requirements could be dropping as early as early next year, Q1, Q2, Q3,
Yeah.
depending on where they fall in the ecosystem. So they're gotta be under a pinch, and anyone that waits later. And I don't know about you, but if you have a contract agreement with that client, and you might need to start having conversations with them about how they want to do that and make some decisions. And if you're not sure, if you're MSP and you're like, what am I looking down the barrel? I listened to your podcast, Bobby. I'm not sure if I want to do it. Reach out to us. We want to help you. We've been there, we did it, we've climbed the mountains. And, if you're not sure if you want to do it, hey, this ecosystem is huge. We are open book, just like we are on the podcast. We share. And of course, Brian Hubbard's MSP CyberX is also a great place to connect with a lot of other organizations that are doing the same thing as we are.
Right. So once you have made the decision and you have decided to move forward on the CMMC Mountain, I'm keeping with the visuals here. Here we go. I'm going full podcast mode with the visual story. Okay, let's pretend like your leadership are like tied to your waist with a rope and they are rocks behind you. Okay. Now, if you do not have the leadership buy-in, those rocks are going to be quite heavy. Or you could put them on like a nice little wagon and pull them along with you. Okay.
Doesn't sound exciting either. It's a little easier, but not great.
I kind of was thinking of explaining it this way because it's still not going to be easy to implement this throughout your organization, but to have leadership buy-in is critical. I cannot imagine doing this without it.
And there are a lot of people in other organizations that are kind of scratching their heads going, I don't think I can pull this off here.
Yeah.
You absolutely need leadership buy-in. If you're the intern or you've only been there for a few years, then you have
if you're
no
an
chance,
intern,
man.
if you're an intern and you're doing this right now, trying to do this for a whole client right now, like, and you're listening to us, run away.
Run.
This is so scary. I couldn't imagine doing
you
that.
You want the leadership cheering you on. You want them ahead of you. They should be the first people to sign up for the tabletop exercises and the training. Right. They shouldn't be like, oh, why do I have to do this? Like they gotta be like, oh, this is going to get us where we need to be. Like they gotta be sold out for this because it is not an easy task to do. So if you don't have leadership buy-in, it ain't going to be fun.
Exactly. So now let's talk about just a little teeny bit about the cost of this thing, right? So the third point is, are you sitting on at least $250,000? Now that is not a small number. Well, sorry, for some MSPs, maybe that is a smaller number, but for us, we are not big, and that is not a small number. So let's put
some context on that. Okay. When we were at Seek East, which was awesome, I had such a great time at the conference. I'd kind of shared that several times with MSPs and they kind of were like, like, what do you mean? Is it really that much? It's not a CapEx one-time stroke a check. That's how much it's going to be. But when you start looking at that, you've got specific resources that that's pretty much all they're going to be doing for a
Right.
considerable amount of time as you try to get that done. So that's that person's salary that gets allocated towards that. You've
Mhm.
got licenses you have to pay for. You have training because there's, and unless you were in the matrix and you could just jack right in the back of your head and somehow download everything magically, you're going to have to go to CCP or you have to go to other types of training. All this stuff adds up. The contracts for CMMC, it better be different because the assessors are going to be looking at your contracts, and your contracts have to appropriately reference to your shared responsibility matrix, right? So
Mhm.
you go into an attorney to get this stuff written up specifically to help address these challenges. If you're not, it's not something I would recommend. I mean, I'm not saying you can't, but and then there's so many ways that you sort of get hit by costs that has to deal with
Yeah.
CMMC. Also, for us, we went into a massive dry spell of new clients because of the fact that our focus was so directed towards CMMC. We lost our average peak of a return on our pipeline, right? Just because
Yeah.
of the fact that we were changing direction so heavily over the course of the last year and a half towards CMMC. We had a significant revenue dip because of the fact that we were focusing that way. So,
Mhm.
every MSP is different in how they engage it. We're a 15-person company. We're not that large. So that was a
Mhm.
big punch in the face for us. And that's just keeping it real. Like, I'm not saying you're going to spend 250, but if you don't have at least something close to that dollar amount in your bank, it could get really tight for you. And what you
Mhm.
don't want to do is get halfway into the woods and go, this ain't working, and then run halfway back. You've lost both ways at that point. So you really
Exactly.
want to have enough cash that you can easily make it through that whole situation, and you're not having to worry about how you're going to handle it, because it's going to hit your bottom line.
Mhm.
And do not do the marriage counseling for CMMC that I see so many MSPs try to
Wow, we
do.
haven't
What is
brought that
that,
up in a
Kaleigh? What is
while. We
that?
haven't
What is
we
that?
have we have not brought that up in so long. Wow, yes. So, you always would talk about the marriage counseling where you guys are holding hand in hand, going together, walking through the woods together, hoping
Right.
hoping that you'll do it at the same time, both hand in hand.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to hire, I'm going to get one or two clients and we're just going to figure this out together.
We'll
What you're
figure
going
it
to
all out together. It'll
Right.
be
And the problem with
great.
that mentality is now you have aligned your system and what you've got to those clients, not to a system that you want to have a whole bunch of clients assigned to. If you're MSP, the way this thing works is you're going to have more than a few companies that you're doing MSP engagements for CMC. And that's really hard. You've got to have a system that is willing and ready to engage them where they're at, and it can do it at scale. So,
Mhm.
doing that whole marriage counseling thing and we'll just sort of figure it out. It just doesn't really work. I've not seen a successfully an MSP pull that off yet. I've
Yeah.
seen numerous times where they've tried that. MSP looks at it and goes, yeah, they get about 3/4 of the way through and go, this is way too hard. And they just exit. And then that client's like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Don't do that. So I like to think of the money aspect of this, having a good, good amount saved up to climb a mountain like this. I see that as like the equipment, like having good
Yeah.
shoes, having a good backpack, and, climbing up this mountain with, really good equipment on you. And then the next part then
Well,
would
before we do that, I just want to, if the CEOs and other leaders in there, they listen to that and go, well, that's it. I'm done. I'm finished. All right. Let me just peer a little bit behind the curtain here for you. You can anticipate 2.5 to 3.5 additional revenue return for clients that are doing CMMC because the work is so much harder. It requires more certified people. I mean, your contract, general high watermark goes up exponentially.
so true. Yeah, great
and
point.
and also it's much easier to differentiate yourself in the crowd when you have the level 2 certification. So yes, it's very expensive, but the return is substantially worth it from our
Mm,
experience. Now, not
I'm so
every
glad you said that.
MSP is the same. I just
Yeah.
want to say that, and we're charging fairly.
Mhm.
There are organizations that are considerably larger than us that charge a lot more money and have a lot more cost involved than we do. And so I just wanted you to realize it's definitely worth that, but you want to make sure you have that the bank when you go to take it. When we'll talk about that later in season 3 about it in much more detail.
Yes, yeah. That's great. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. So, like I was saying before, so if the money and prepping like financially for it is the what did I call? What did I
Equipment.
call? The
Your equipment.
equipment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
like your backpack and your shoes, then
Those are
the
expensive backpacks and shoes, but yeah, I get it.
really freaking expensive.
Well, you got
Maybe
the
you've
plane
got like a
trip
maybe
and the
you've got a
permits,
really maybe you've
right,
got a
to
really
climb.
cute hat or
Yeah,
something
sure.
in there. I don't know.
Little Colossians, I don't know.
So, okay, what about the tools now? The tools inside your belt or inside your backpack that you're going to use along the climb. This is where I feel like the next point 4 is going into this part of it, which is like invest in learning, like teaching,
Yeah.
teaching people on your staff, whoever is going to be like mostly in charge of this, yourself, like train, go to CCP courses, get a CCP certification, get a CCA, right?
Mhm.
So like things like that to prepare yourself
Yeah.
for this climb and that will help you along the path as you're going up the mountain, right?
And being involved in peer groups, come to
Yeah,
conferences,
peer right.
I've seen MSPs that, like, out of nowhere, like, I've never even heard of them. Like, "Yeah, yeah, we're really close," and you're like, "What the?" Like, I haven't seen you anywhere. I mean, it's not that that's bad, but, like, it's much harder if you don't have an opportunity to talk with other people in the industry. And, to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of us share very freely, just because we're rooting for everybody, you know? So
Mhm.
so definitely get engaged, not just get the certifications, which I wholly agree you absolutely need to have at least a CCP or CCA, but also talk with your peers. It's
Mhm.
very helpful.
Yeah. So, what if you were going along this journey and you had a map, right, that took you along the road, but you couldn't really read it that well? You needed help reading it. You were a bit lost on the path. Wouldn't a park ranger who came on just alongside you
I
to
didn't know
help
where you were
you
going with that.
do you see where I'm going now?
Yeah,
To
keep
help
going.
you
This is great.
along the path up this mountain. And you know what? A consultant, somebody
Yeah,
who can come alongside you and help you up, that would be great during
for
this
sure.
time of the journey to be
Must
able to
have.
tell you what tools that you can use and you can't, maybe some that you can't use, the scoping of
Mhm.
your company, what is in scope, what is not in scope, that can be quite a difficult process. And if you get that wrong, that will be very frustrating to go
Oof.
back and change in your documentation process. So maybe, just maybe, talk with a park ranger before you go
Yeah.
way too far down the wrong path.
It's a bad day when you find that out. And it's similar to like if you're doing construction. You want that engineer who's going to sample the soil, who's going to look at that and go, there's a sinkhole there. You got a problem. That
Mhm.
is a bad, bad day when you're like, in your boxers sitting down to watch, NFL on Monday night. And then all of a sudden your whole living room falls into a hole. It's a bad day. So you really want to talk with uh I recommend right now C3PAOs that have gone through JSVAs that have actually seen it. Now, mileage will vary, once this ecosystem really starts getting kicked off. People that are just CCAs and others that haven't participated in those, you'll start to see more maturity as more people have gone through their own audits and those types of things. But
Mhm.
that's a good rule of thumb. You want to talk with organizations that have at least gone through several JSVAs and they understand more about the scoping and they've literally been through that journey and they can work a lot closer with you on how to do that. I can't recommend that enough. I'm not saying you can't do it on your own because I've seen other people do it successfully. It's just not something we felt comfortable on our own doing.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
actually engaged with a C3PO. We used Kiri systems and they were awesome. Then we actually invested and talked with some other CCAs and that we had friends and we just showed them what was going on and got their input because again, that scoping design is what you build off of. And if you get that wrong, you can't fix that overnight. You can change a policy, but you can't change your design, overnight. You're screwed if you got that wrong.
Right. Now, although, I mean, I'm sure many of you guys who are listening to this know this, but you can't, once you get, that C3PAO to help you with the scoping process or whatever it may be. They cannot do the assessment itself
Correct.
for you, but it's still critical to have that
Hmm.
person. So it doesn't mean just because they can't help you with, or just because they can't do the assessment for you, doesn't mean that you shouldn't get somebody else's help. So, maybe look at one C3PAO to do your assessment and another person to help you with the scoping and design, process of all of
Absolutely. And
this.
we've have several clients that we're working with that actually have C3POs that are engaged, and we're working together with them and the
Yeah.
C3PO consultant they're engaged with. We love that because that just helps someone kind of looking over our shoulders. That's not something that we're against. We actually are for that.
Right.
And we call it the triad, right? You want to
Mhm.
have that because you've got the client, you've got additional outside consultant and the MSP. I think that really pretty much guarantees you success at the end. I mean, so there's no guarantees, but I bet that's about as close as you can get because you just
Mhm.
got multiple parties looking at it to try to make sure you get on the mountain correctly.
I'm excited to talk more about that sort of perspective in the next mountain that we climb on
Yeah.
this next episode because that'll be great.
Now
So
we're gonna
okay,
do that in season 3, right? So
that's going to be
we're giving
season 3.
season 3. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So this is going to be the end of season 2 if you're listening to this now, but season 3 we will be talking about the next mountain. So
Hmm.
let's talk about, we just did 5, which is talking to a consultant, getting that scoping piece done.
Hmm.
Now the next part of this climb up is kind of split into 2 perspectives. There's the
Right.
design and there's the documentation, right?
Right. Right.
And those 2 things are quite difficult. I'm not going to say that they're easy or that one's very easy and the other one's super hard kind of thing. So you're going to need 2 perspectives
Yeah.
on this whole process. Do you want to talk a little bit on your perspective of doing that
Well,
implementation piece?
I want to hear yours thought of it. I mean, I have mine, but I mean, you saw it from a different perspective. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that
Well,
needs to be
that's
both? I'm just curious.
interesting. I didn't know I'd be put on the spot like this. But in my perspective, I thought so Adam did one, right? Adam
Right.
did the documentation and you did the design piece of
Design.
it. I
Mhm.
do believe that it takes a certain mind to do one and a certain mind to do
You know
another.
this mind. Could I have been great at the
I
documentation?
sure do, and I don't want you doing my documentation, mister. So, yeah, it's an email coming from you when there's spelling errors.
Oh,
So, yeah, I know,
I own
I
it.
don't
It's
want
me. It's
it's okay.
definitely me.
It's alright. But you're excellent at design because you're very innovative in that way, and you can kind of come up with, it's not just like, how did somebody else do it, but it's like, how did somebody else do it, and how can I make it better, and how can I
Right.
evolve this to make it exactly what we need and what our clients need, and so I really do feel like, and then there's Adam that's like, I do believe that in section 1320, and
He's so
so
good at that. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do believe that there are 2 minds, and I
Mhm.
do think that there should be separate people doing that. I saw that perspective, at least from my perspective, looking in on watching you guys do it. That's what I saw. Um,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah, I'm
agree. Yeah.
not claiming Jesus, not claiming CMMC
Well,
Jesus.
I think yeah, that's how I feel. And you could be one person and doing both, but boy, you're a unicorn if you can, because the
Yeah, you are
documentation.
special.
Yeah, but just because the documentation piece just takes such a good mind of looking at things analytically and be able to, and it's a lot of writing, man. I mean, so much writing of doing your system security plan. I mean, our system security plan is over 150 pages,
Yeah.
and we don't have a lot of charts and graphs. I mean, like we're pounding it out,
Mm, right.
and so it's legit. And then you've got your policies, and then you've got your procedures, and all of that kind of comes together for I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of words that's taken. And you haven't even picked up your pencil yet, or to actually start typing on the keyboard with pin pecking, if you will, to kind of get the architecture built, right?
Yeah.
Now, me and Adam and multiple people came together to have the design, the scoping. That's what we're referring to when we talk about
Mhm.
scoping. But then you've got to implement it, right? You've got to build the container. You've got to do those types of stuff. You have to add those and get the group, and all of that stuff needs to happen. And, if you don't have two people implementing that or a team of people, you just are extending your time frame on how long it's going to take for you to get that done. And, it
So
just
true.
depends on what your dwell time that you want to have trying to get this implemented.
Right.
Because if you don't have it built, how can you appropriately support your clients, right? So
Right.
you don't want to waste any more time than you have to get it built up so you can appropriately support them. Because if not, then you could be holding back your clients, and that's a bad day.
And if we're putting our MSP hat on and we're thinking about implementing this with multiple different clients, if you're just one person, well, you're not going to be one person doing this for long because you're
No,
going to
that's
get
a great point. Yeah.
like 3 clients and you'll be like, "Oh, I'm exhausted." And then that's it. So like you can't, like, that's not even realistic to
No.
be able to push out to your clients.
Yeah, that's a
So
good point.
even if it is happening now for you right now, great, but that's not gonna be able to withstand the next mountain.
Mm-mm.
You know
No,
what I mean?
definitely not.
So, and let's talk about, so we've been talking about the two sides, the design, the documentation, and how we believe that should be split into 2 different people, but also, and the seventh point is building this with inheritance and proof in
Right.
mind, which is
Yep.
kind of like what we were talking about before, of like the perspective of our clients when doing this, right?
Mhm.
So you need to know while you're building this, how is this going to connect with
Yep.
our clients? What is going to happen here? And if you don't understand that piece, you're going to do like what Bobby was saying earlier, of like, you can make this pretty little tiny bubble right here and have this audited, but that's not what is going to be
Right.
working with your clients. So you have to think about that, or you'll be doing your company a complete and total, injustice for the future with the next mountain.
Couldn't have said it better.
Wow. I've made you
Next
speechless. That's
next
it.
point, please.
Wow. Incredible. I think I've never done that before. Everybody
Yeah.
make note.
Yeah.
Okay. The next point is building evidence. Ooh,
Yeah.
this is good stuff. This is,
It'll get you on the audit possibly, because it just depends
yeah.
on. Now there's okay, I'm just gonna be real here. Everybody pay attention. This is real. This is me telling you here. All right. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. Um, Not all C3POs are equal. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Just like when you go into court, every judge is going to look at things differently, right? That's why some attorneys are like, I would like this judge, please. Unlike in law, you can pick who your judge is going to be in general, because you
So
can pick the
true.
C3PO that you're going to do business with because you're paying them. All right. That's how that works. And now you might not be able
That's
to
how
pick
that
your
works.
assessment team, but you can talk to the C3PO and have a better understanding where they're at. Now, they can't consult you, but you can talk with them to go through and try to have a better understanding. And not all of them are equal. So when you're looking at this, you really have to be very, very careful in who you pick and how you choose and how you can work through that, because it will have a bearing on how successful you are.
Mhm. And
So,
it's gonna help when, well, we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but like keeping, when you're in the actual assessment, keeping that assessor on track, on path, like, oh, no, 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 this way. This is what we're looking at, right? Wait,
right.
wait, 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 wait. Right here.
And
They'll help
the
you with
reason why
that.
I say that is, like, some C3POs will be like, okay, um, you have all of the documentation, you have all these pieces, you're good. Most C3POs would look at this and go, but where's the evidence? Like, where's the logs of you living in it that shows
Mhm.
that you've done the training? Well, we haven't done the training yet. We just got the container built. Okay, well, how about a tabletop? Well, that's scheduled for next month. You're like, okay. Well, how show me how you've tested these analytic rules. Well, we haven't had been in our container long enough. That's a lot of asterisks that start adding up, and not all C3POs will be cool with that. So you
Right.
need to build the evidence enough time. So it might take you 7 to 8 months to a year to build it, but then if you're not living in it yet, then you haven't built the evidence. So you need to build that into your time frame of when you're doing that. And we always do that with our clients. We're like, this is how long we think it's going to take to build it, and here's the additional time frame it's going to take for us to build evidence. We'll work as best as we can in doing this, but we're going to need that in the audit to prove that we did it right.
Right. So the next part, I was trying to visualize how I was going to tell this, right? So then, so the ninth point that we're making here is a self-assessment.
Oh, that's a
Do a
big one.
self-assessment. Now, in my head, what I'm picturing is you're getting to the top of this first
Very
mountain,
close. Very close.
right? And gliding down is like doing the assessment. You're going to direct, you're going to move. Let's say what are those things called that make you look like a little flying monkey when you're what is that called?
Oh,
Those
those little
suits.
wingsuits, the
Those little
wingsuits.
wingsuits, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what if you, like, flew down in those? This is, like, the self-assessment is, like, looking at those wings and making sure everything's good, as well as looking down that there's no other mountains that you're going to slam right into when you go down. You're, like, double checking all of your equipment, double checking your stuff before you actually do it, and you might possibly hurt yourself, and your hospital bill's gonna be really expensive.
If you live.
So, yeah, if you if you
Well,
live,
the
exactly.
self-assessment process is so valid because what you have to do in there is you're building the habit of going through all 320 assessment objectives and having a list of how for each one of those you're going to prove that you're doing it right.
Mhm.
So not like I think we're good, but like write out how you're going to do it, what evidence you're going to use to do it with, and if you have some other additional screenshots to prove to yourself and maybe even to an auditor that you're doing it, do that too. And if you
Mhm.
go through all 320 of those, now you have a great evidence bank. And maybe a good chunk of that the auditor might take, and maybe they might not. But if
Right.
it cuts down half of your day of your 3 day, assessment time frame, that is great. The less time, even if they don't charge you less, the less time you're talking to the auditor, less chance they're going to find something wrong, right? So get
So
them in,
true.
get them
Get
out,
'em out.
and you don't want them to stay any longer than you have to. So
Exactly.
that is crucial. So being prepared, and then you can use that readiness piece as a good journey to help you. And then it's also something really great to use to have that kind of walk the dance of someone pretending to be the auditor, and you can use that document to kind of walk it to prove your stance. It's such a valuable document. And then after you get your assessment right, which we're going to fast forward for just we're not going to cover the other points, but I'm just going to jump them for a second and say you
Okay.
have that. You're going to need to do that yearly and
Yeah.
save that, right? As part of what the 32 CFR requires us to do. So you're having the habit of
Yes.
doing that because you're going to have to do that every year of making sure that you've done that. Now there's some auditors and people that I've heard say, "Oh, you just kind of review stuff, it's fine." Others that are like, "No, like we want to see." Again, mileage varies in who you're talking with. Um, so we'll just let
Yeah.
that lay where that's at on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of auditors, if at this point, number 10, the point that we're trying to make is you should be reaching out to the C3PO that is going to be doing your assessment if you
Yes.
have not already.
When do you think you should, Kaleigh? I'm curious.
When?
Yeah, when should you start reaching out to your C3PO? What step would you pick?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't I is there a too early just to talk with them?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think when you feel like you're really committed and you're doing it and you're not turning back, like
Right,
that's when you want to reach out to your C3PO because they're
right.
booked up. Like I've talked to some that they're in Q3 already for their assessment piece. So
Yep.
why would you want to wait until you're ready? Like go ahead. Some of them require deposits, some don't. So mileage varies there, and prices also vary. So you might want to get several different ones. Um, it's critical as an MSP. You need to get your butt in gear and start listening and finding C3POs. Do not throw your clients to the wolves. Get out there and find the good ones
Yeah.
because they may not pick the right one, and you both may be very sorry for that lesson learned. So
Mhm.
you really need to have as an MSP your ear to the ground and have that Rolodex deep enough to help your clients get where they need to go. And that's a really important aspect is don't leave that to the last minute. They should start talking to them probably in step 3 or 4 that we mentioned. But when
Right.
you're ready and you're in interest doing it, go ahead and get it scheduled. You can book it out months and months in advance. And if you have to kick it, you can, and most will let you do that.
Mhm.
So, there's not a penalty or fee for moving it. That might change, but at least try.
Yeah. Right, absolutely. So point 11, we're getting to the end. We're
Yes, so
so
close.
close. We're talking about phase 1 and 2 of the auditing process, right? So you don't just, if you guys are not familiar whatsoever with the assessment process and what happens with a C3PAO, you don't just waltz in one day and say, I'm here, and you have all of your documentation with you.
In
And
case
that's
you guys don't know, Kaleigh has a beautiful voice. She's an
Oh,
excellent
thank
singer.
you. Thank you for
You
saying that.
got just a little taste.
I just watched Wicked last night, and maybe it just like,
It just came out.
the musical theater just jumped
The
out.
melody of CMMC. I can't wait to hear it. I just feel an album in the future,
Oh, no.
CMMC's
I
greatest
hope I
hits.
never have to write an album about CMMC, honestly. But you have to send them information beforehand so they can be like, yeah, like we think you are good enough to be assessed, right? So
You're talking about phase 1, right?
Right, phase 1, right.
Mhm.
And then do you wanna talk a little bit about how that rolls into phase 2 and what that looks like?
Yeah, so you got to get them ready for the go, no go. So,
Mhm.
assuming that you've kept your ear to the ground, you've found some adequate C3POs that are going to work, just because you found one and you might be happy with it, you definitely should have some alternatives because they may not have available space for you to be able to line up in the time frame the client has.
Right.
I've heard of individual organizations even booking spots in advance for their clients, which is kind of interesting. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but if you're big enough and you kind of have a big enough wallet, I'm sure you could reserve a lot of spaces. But mileage may vary.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
but the phase 1, what you have to do is you've got to get things lined up. So you've already picked your C3PO and you provide them body of evidence and they look at it and it's basically a go, no go. They look at that and they say, okay, great job. The SSP is not written on a napkin. It's actually on a piece of paper and it has more than a few pages that looks like it's got the content. Now they're not assessing it. They're just looking at the validity of it. They just want to say, this looks valid. This is adequate for us to move forward. And then they move forward. They're not assessing any of your body of evidence at that point.
Right.
Now, the CAP has some words and verbiage that may suggest otherwise. Every C3PO that I've ever talked to does not approach it that way. And I have a feeling it'll be more eloquently put once the real CAP comes out, which is in probably less than 30 days. Because I'm hoping they get it finished before assessments are supposed to start, because it'd be really weird.
Just by our freaking butt luck, it's being posted tomorrow. And we're going to have to come back and update this part. Hallelujah. You're welcome. We did it. We made the CAP be released tomorrow if you're listening to this now.
We're not going to hold back. We'll release this as it is and we'll just...
We sure will. Get over it. That's all I'm saying right now.
Deal with it. Yeah. And now phase 2 is basically the audit in earnest. That's where if you have done your homework and you've done your readiness assessment yourself and you have all that body of evidence like we're talking about and you show you prove it, it is literally the blueprint of how you walk down your assessment. And if you do it right, you could potentially cut days off of your assessment time.
Okay, we're getting so close. We're almost there. We're point 12. We're at the end, which is actually just the beginning. And that is maintaining compliance. You don't just do the assessment and then you're done. You've got to keep it going, right? So that's some good stuff.
And I've heard clients, not our clients, thank God, but I've heard others talk about how they've had situations where, all right, now that we have this implemented, when can we roll it back so that we can do things like we're used to? You're like, what? You're like, no. Never. That's like in perpetuity.
You gotta leave the dib space, huh, buddy?
Right. Yeah. I mean, once you get married, look, man, you're not throwing your clothes and shoes wherever you want. You got someone else who says, hey, I think you need to kind of clean up, So you don't get to just live that life that you have in the past before CMMC once you get your level 2 certification. You have to maintain it. You have to continue to build that body of evidence. You're doing the yearly attestations like we were talking about. And you build that habit up so that when year 3 rolls around, it's not a shocker. And
Yeah.
there are C3POs that will actually have that as part of their cost. You can
Hmm.
amortize that cost. So you don't have to necessarily do a CapEx for your audit. There are some C3POs that will have a yearly connection with you over that period and will include it in the cost of doing it. And you can even leverage that to some extent for your yearly audit as well. So there's a lot of benefits of ways to look at that. So those are conversations you can have with C3POs about that. Not all do that, but some do. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, guys, we have gone through 12 points and we've done pretty good. We're at 43 minutes right now as I'm looking
Okay.
here. So I think it's the best we've done with 12 points having to cover in a video. So we've gone through the first mountain.
Yeah.
Okay. We're doing the perspective of an MSP going through CMMC. So with
Uh,
the
I,
perspective of,
I
go
want to
ahead.
ask you, why do you think there's a second mountain? Maybe people don't know why. I want to hear your
Well, you
thoughts.
now have to figure out how to sell and implement this to clients,
Right.
which I
Because they got to climb their mountain, right?
mean,
So,
they have to climb their mountain, so, like, you're going too, buddy, you know what I mean? Like, even if
right.
you and you know what? I think it's another mountain. I don't think you're just going back around and then going up the
Mm-mm.
same mountain again. I think it's different, and that's why, we can talk a little bit more about that in our next episode, but, yeah, I think that's why the perspective is like that, and
Yeah.
there's comes with its own challenges, its own
So,
different parts to this
so different.
whole and I don't know if there's gonna be 12 points in that one too. It might be a few different numbers, So just stay
Yeah.
tuned. We're gonna think
Hmm.
about that. We're gonna mull it over. Don't say anything yet, okay?
Well, I think it's really interesting because there's the how you support and get clients, right? But then there's the way that you have to operate as an MSP. Right?
Yeah,
You have to be successful as an MSP. You have to be able to support the clients. You have to validate what you're doing is going to be profitable. You have to track. And there's certain math as MSPs that mature MSPs know, you know, right in their bones what they're doing is going to be profitable because if they don't, they're going to go out of business, right?
yeah,
All you can do is scale the wrong way, and you just go out of business faster. And so you have to do that in a way. And this is all new for a lot of companies that are trying to implement it at scale, and MSPs are no exception. So that
right,
math equation part, if you're not really good at doing it in your commercial side and have the experience in how to implement on your CMMC side, you literally could put yourself out of business going to CMC as an MSP if you don't know what you're doing.
right,
And so, and also find yourself in a lot of legal waters because there's a lot of requirements and other things you got to do. This is not just, hey, I got a kiddie pool. I mean, this is like chummy waters that are, can be a bit scary if you don't know what you're doing. So
right,
as an MSP, you really have to perk up and pay attention. And if you're looking for MSPs, you really want to make sure you're finding those MSPs who respect and understand the sanctity of what they're trying to accomplish and how serious and sobering it needs to be taken.
mhm.
Sorry,
Well,
that's a little
guys
scary, but I wasn't trying to be that way.
well, guys, doom and gloom for the end of this. Here we go. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's honestly the truth, and it can be
Yeah.
when you find an MSP, that works with your company, or when you are an MSP and you get to start helping clients do this, and it's really honestly an incredible thing as well.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for our second mountain that we are going to climb as an MSP and walk you guys through how to climb it as an MSP. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, the final episode of season 2. We hope you guys enjoyed all of season 2. Tears, wipe them away. But stay tuned for some really heavy hitters for season 3.
Oh, it's gonna be good.
We are excited. So yeah, stay tuned for season 3 coming soon. But until then, guys, keep on climbing. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching season 2 of Climbing Mount CMMC. Stay tuned in 2 weeks for the start of season 3.